When Walter and I visited my husband's parents, his mom came to pick us up from the airport. She said I couldn't ride in the car, so I had to walk home. I felt really upset about this, especially because it's a long 3-hour walk, even though I'm strong. I was almost in tears, but thankfully someone helped me out. In the end, it was my mother-in-law who felt sorry for what she did. My name is Jennifer, and I'm 30 years old. I met my husband, Walter, when we were both in college. We love mountain climbing. Walter is 2 years younger than me, and he's really good-looking and popular. When he asked me out, I couldn't believe it, but he says he likes how I tackle challenges without complaining. Walter has a good job at a big company and earns a lot of money. We've been happily married since college, but there's something that bothers me. During dinner, Walter always gets calls from his mom and leaves to talk to her in his room. Walter's mom calls him often, about once every 2 days. She really loves her son, and Walter is very sweet to her, which makes me wonder if he's too attached to his mom. But since she raised him well, I feel like I should respect her too. However, it seems like our feelings toward each other are different. It started before we got married when we went to visit my husband's parents. Walter's mom didn't seem happy when she found out I'm 2 years older than him and almost 30. She seemed unhappy throughout our visit, but Walter's dad didn't mind. He said age doesn't matter and that I seem like a reliable person who's perfect for Walter, who has his weaker moments. But that made Walter's mom even more upset. Walter's mom didn't want to argue with his dad directly, so she decided to make things difficult for me without him noticing. Sometimes she'd say things like, "Oh dear, I'm sorry, Jennifer, but the snacks I gave you are bad. Let me get you something else." When she was being mean on purpose, she'd widen her eyes, snort, and twist her lips. I felt like I was studying her behavior like a scientist studying animals. "It's all right, I can eat it." I smiled and cut off the spoiled part of the dried fruit and ate the rest. Back from my mountain club days, I learned to make do with whatever food was available. Walter's dad and Walter himself chuckled, saying, "That's just like Jennifer," and we all laughed. But then Walter's dad told his mom not to serve me something like that again. And the mood stayed light, but I wasn't paying enough attention. "I'm sorry," I said, still laughing, but I caught her quick, sharp glance and heard her tongue click disapprovingly. There were other times, like when she showed off souvenirs from Italy. She gave Walter a nice tie, but for me, it was a cheap t-shirt with a fake logo. "Come on, try on the tie, Jennifer. You too, try on the shirt," she said, with that same expression on her face. I realized it was another jab at me. No thanks. I don't wear ties with casual clothes, and I'm not feeling like trying on a shirt right now, I said, trying to keep the mood light with a smile, but inside, I was really frustrated. After that, I only used that t-shirt for things like gardening in the summer or as a funny prop in photos with my friends. I couldn't stand even looking at it. These little mean acts were subtle, so only I could really tell what was going on. When I tried talking to Walter about it, he'd just brush it off, saying, "Mom's a bit odd, forgive her." But the constant negativity was wearing me down. We live about an hour's drive from my in-laws, so it was always hanging over us that we could visit them whenever. That thought made me feel down. Then, out of the blue, Walter told me, "Jennifer, I've got some sudden news. I'm being transferred. It starts next month, so get ready." Walter was being moved for work. He said sorry, but secretly I felt relieved. It gave us a reason to keep our distance from my in-laws. "Okay, don't worry. I'll handle the preparations. I'll even ask my family for help." I happily went ahead with the moving preparations. Finally, I thought I could escape from my mother-in-law's constant teasing. Although I was nervous about starting a new life, most of my excitement came from the thought of getting away from her. Once the move was done, I hoped I could put some distance between us, but then the phone rang. It was my mother-in-law, asking where I'd been and hinting that I might be ignoring her son to spend time with my own parents. I wanted to let out a big sigh, but I stayed calm and explained that I was just busy at the store and wanted to make sure Walter had good meals in our new home. Her calls started coming more often, every 2 days. Even though we were seeing each other less, we were talking more. But most of the time, it was just her making little digs at me. She'd say things like, "My son is sensitive." I wonder if someone as tough as Jennifer can understand him. His high school girlfriend was so delicate, but now his tastes have changed, haven't they? It was always stuff meant to make me feel uncomfortable. It seems like Walter's mom doesn't have another way to deal with her stress. And unfortunately, I became the target for it. It felt like I was just a dumping ground for her frustrations. What hurt the most were her comments about having children. She'd say things like, "Jennifer, you're already 30. Can you even have a normal child being older than my son?" It was shocking to hear such outdated and hurtful remarks, especially since I'd been worrying about that myself lately. I couldn't help but cry after hanging up the phone. I wondered what she really thought of me. Did she believe that her words wouldn't hurt me? As I kept giving neutral answers to avoid confrontation, maybe she got bored of trying to bully me, and the calls started to decrease. It was a huge relief for me. Then, on New Year's Day the next year, my husband and I went to visit my in-laws. They were picking us up from the airport. Walter's dad greeted us warmly, which was a relief because I was really anxious about seeing his mom. His friendliness made me feel better. We exchanged New Year's greetings, and despite my worries, it seemed like things might be okay. We exchanged New Year's greetings, but my mother-in-law didn't even glance at me. Maybe she was upset about my distant response to her constant calls. Our relationship was strained, and I was trying to figure out how to handle it. "Were you tired from the trip? How about we grab a coffee at the airport cafe?" Walter's dad suggested, oblivious to the tension between his wife and me. "Sounds good. Isn't there a cafe on the second floor?" Walter replied cheerfully, and we made our way to a cafe inside the airport. "Should I drive us home?" Walter offered. "No, I'm still comfortable driving," his mother replied curtly. While the men chatted away, my mother-in-law and I sat in silence. "Excuse me, I need to use the restroom," I said after placing my order, and I stood up from the table. "Oh, I think I'll go too," my mother-in-law said, getting up to follow me. I had a sinking feeling about this. As we approached the entrance to the women's restroom, my mother-in-law, walking behind me, suddenly said, "Since you can't ride in the car, why don't you just walk back?" Confused by her words, I turned to look at her, and there it was again, that same expression on her face. "We're going back as a family of 3. You're a stranger here, aren't you?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Walk back from here to my in-laws' house? How far was that? And to call her son's wife a stranger. I stood there, frozen in shock, as my mother-in-law kept hurling words at me. "I've been kind enough to call you often, but you always respond so coldly. Living near your parents' house has made you arrogant. I don't even want to think of you as my daughter-in-law. You're just a stranger, a complete stranger." Her voice was getting louder. I was stunned, but I didn't want to make a scene in public, so I replied quietly, "Yes, I understand." Feeling too embarrassed to go back to where Walter and his dad were, I headed towards the airport exit, feeling heavy-hearted. Even though she told me to walk back, this was an airport, surely there were taxis or buses. I could take one as far as possible and then walk the rest of the way. But more than that, I was worried about how I would face my in-laws after this incident and how I would spend the next few days with them. For now, I searched for transportation to my in-laws' house on my phone. There was a bus leaving in just 10 minutes, but it wouldn't take me directly there. From where it dropped me off, I'd have to walk. It might take about 3 hours in total. 3 hours. I could manage that with my legs trained from mountain climbing. But there's a big difference between walking for fun and being forced to walk because of harassment. Tears filled my eyes. Was it really my fault? Maybe if I had been nicer on the phone, even after hearing those hurtful things, none of this would have happened. Lost in these thoughts as I walked, I suddenly felt a tap on my shoulder from behind. "Jennifer, why are you walking here?" It was Walter's dad. "Didn't my wife say something to you at the restroom?" "I was on my way there too, and I saw you and my wife talking, and then you started to leave, so I followed you." Looking at his kind face, the tears I'd been holding back finally spilled over, running down my cheeks. "Jennifer, what's going on?" he asked with concern. I made up my mind to tell Walter's dad the truth. So I shared with him exactly what his wife had said, and he became angrier than I'd ever seen him. Oh my, did she really say that to my son's wife? Then, to my surprise, he said something unexpected. "I'll walk with you, Jennifer." With that, he stepped in front of me and began walking. Father-in-law? Don't worry. I used to enjoy mountain climbing, and I went on many trips with Walter when he was little. A 3-hour walk one way is nothing. Sure enough, Walter's dad walked with a steady stride, not at all like someone in their 60s. "Come on, let's go." We didn't tell Walter we were leaving. Is that okay? I suddenly remembered that I hadn't informed Walter about our departure. Walter will be alright. She'll probably convince him to wait. I'll give him a call. With that, Walter's dad took out his phone. He was sending a text to Walter's mom. He let her know that he was walking back with me and that the car keys were in his bag. While we waited for the bus, Walter's dad's phone rang. He answered, and I could tell from his tone that he was trying to control his anger. It must have been Walter's mom on the other end. "I heard what you said to Jennifer. If you're going to talk like that, then I won't ride in the car either." I could hear Walter's mom's panicked voice shouting from the other end. "That's not true. She said she wanted to walk for exercise." I was more bewildered than anything. "We'll discuss this when we get home," Walter's dad said firmly as he hung up and pocketed his phone. Maybe because Walter's dad's phone was busy, mine started ringing next. It was definitely Walter's mom. Walter's dad and I exchanged a glance. What could she want now? To tell us to get in the car? I definitely wasn't going to pick up, so I decided to ignore it too. Father-in-law and I quietly boarded the bus and continued our walk after getting off. "This way is a shortcut. There's a slope here for a while. But let's do our best," he said, occasionally offering advice as we walked. It almost felt like we were climbing a mountain together, but I hadn't planned on walking so much today, and I was just wearing regular boots. Father-in-law had on leather shoes. This is going to be tough on our feet, I thought to myself, but I only asked once. Father-in-law, are your feet okay? Won't walking for a long time in those shoes hurt them?" He glanced at my feet and squinted. "Looks like we're in the same boat. It's unbelievable that she would make a woman walk so far in those shoes." We both thought about calling a taxi, but neither of us said anything, wanting to defy Walter's mom. "But Jennifer, you're strong. You're walking such a long distance without complaining. I bet that's what attracted Walter to you," he said, making me feel a little better. After a long walk, we kept going, stopping at a grocery store to buy drinks from vending machines to stay hydrated. About 3 hours later, as the sun started to set, we finally reached my in-laws' house. Their car was parked out front. Mother-in-law and Walter must be inside. "We're back," Father-in-law announced as he opened the front door, and Walter rushed over. "Jennifer, I was so worried." "What happened? Why did you suddenly decide to walk back for exercise? Did Mom say something?" "No, that's not it. Mom told Jennifer to walk back," Father-in-law explained, looking understandably exhausted as he took a seat near the entrance. Mother-in-law, who had just come out of the living room, looked shocked and pale. "No, that's not true. It's not what happened. It seems there's been a misunderstanding." "What misunderstanding?" I couldn't stay silent any longer. "You said, since you can't ride in the car, why don't you walk back?" "Didn't you?" I stated plainly. I despise lying, and this situation reminded me of my mountain climbing club days. A 3-hour walk one way was good exercise. Walter glanced at his mother. "He knows I'm not the type to lie," I added. The eyes of Walter, his father, and I were all fixed on mother-in-law. "What, you believe this woman over me? You're choosing her over your family? She's just a stranger, isn't she?" Mother-in-law screamed. "So I wasn't allowed in the car because I'm a stranger," I said quietly. "Mom, I can't believe you would say something like that. Jennifer is an important part of my family. I wanted you to feel the same way," Walter said, his fist clenched, his hand trembling with anger. "If you're going to treat Jennifer like this, I'm done with you, Mom. I won't answer your calls anymore. Don't contact Jennifer either," Walter declared, taking my hand firmly. "Let's go." "Walter, wait," but Walter slammed the door shut, and without a backward glance, he took my hand and we started walking. A year later. "Hey Jennifer, Walter, come check out this view. It's amazing up here." Walter, his father, and I were out mountain climbing together. 6 months after the New Year incident, Walter got a transfer and we moved back to our old neighborhood. After what happened at the New Year celebration, Walter's dad decided to get a divorce and move closer to our house. Climbing together on weekends has become a regular thing for us. "Shall we have lunch here?" At the summit, we eagerly began preparing our meal. As we worked, Father-in-law started talking. Mom went on a spending spree after the divorce. Even though the property was divided fairly, it seems she's already having financial troubles. Maybe she was feeling lonely. The divorce was tough, with lots of crying and screaming. Maybe it's best for both of us to have some distance now. She needs to expand her world too. Otherwise, she's the type to take out her stress on those close to her. I listened quietly to their conversation. I'll focus on my own world so I don't have to unload my stress onto others. looking out at the view from the mountain with my dear family. I made that promise to myself.